Number 10. Super Strike. In the 90s, plenty of gamers enjoyed the Strike series, a sandbox shooter where your primary vehicle is a helicopter. Electronic Arts published 5 in the series between 1992 and 1997, and then the series faded away. There were rumors of a 6th Strike game which never came to fruition, but we can't leave it out of the question. In fact, it could be the cap on the series, and this package could put all 6 together and give new life to the heli-shooter. This package, which I call Super Strike, could contain Desert Strike, Return to the Gulf, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, Soviet Strike, and Nuclear Strike, plus a bonus game to finish the story. I might propose the game be set in the early 2000s, and in mind of the times, take place generally in Afghanistan. The name? Terror Strike. Well, it may seem insensitive, but it fits. Number 9. Wizards and Warriors, Forgotten Lore. In the early NES days, many players were introduced to a knight named Kuros. Wizards and Warriors was developed by Rare and published by Acclaim. It was a medieval-style hack-and-slash platform adventure packed with treasure, and items of variable value. While it had a sizable fan base, plenty of gamers were turned away by its sometimes iffy controls and cheap shots from myriad enemies. Rare seemed to have some lofty plans for it, as they created for the Game Boy Wizards and Warriors 10, Fortress of Fear. However, after only 3 chapters on the NES and the 1 Game Boy chapter, no more has been seen of the series. The rest of the story should be told, and putting it all in one package would be a great way to do it. To that end, I propose Wizards and Warriors Forgotten Lore. It would be fun to see how the series might have evolved over the course of the console generations. Forgotten Lore would of course feature the original NES trilogy in all its flawed glory. Chapters 4 and 5 could show how it would have appeared on Sega Genesis and or Super Nintendo. Chapters 6 and 7 could have shown themselves on PlayStation and Sega Saturn. 8 could have made the 3D jump on the Nintendo 64 or Sega Dreamcast, most likely to the worst reviews in the series, while 9 could have revamped the story on PlayStation 2 and Xbox. Perhaps the 9th chapter could also have made a show on GameCube with a color-enhanced edition of Fortress of Fear as an unlockable bonus game. Alternatively, the Game Boy version could have been included with a different adaptation of Chapter 10 in new games for PS2 and Xbox. We may never know, but Wizards and Warriors is a series that's ripe for renewal. Number 8. Hudson Best Collection. Maybe this is cheating a little bit, but I am going to pad this entry. Hudson did re-release a few Famicom games on the Game Boy Advance at the end of 2005, under the Hudson Best Collection label, but these never left Japan. It's true that many of the original games were brought to the NES, but a few were not. Aside from these collections, I am also nominating a few extra Bomberman hits and a number of TurboGrafx 16 titles which should see a wider release. Here's a quick list. All 4 of the NES Adventure Island games, the 2 Adventure Islands for Super NES, the Best of Bomberman, the Bonk series, some Lode Runner, Myland's Secret Castle, Princess Tomato, Star Force, Starship Hector, Star Soldier, and among the games that weren't released outside of Japan, Binary Land, Challenger, and Nuts and Milk. There are more that might fit in, which I would leave to whichever publisher to decide. Publisher in question? Delve into Hudson's archive and go wild! Number 7. Konami Collector's Series Rising Sun. I have to be honest, I have very little information about these 3 franchises, but that's exactly why I've placed them on this list. Here's what I do know. Twinbee is a long-running series of shooters with some interesting differences from the norm. For one thing, you shoot bells to change up the power-ups. We got one officially licensed entry for the NES called Stinger, and never saw anything else. Even worse, we didn't get any official localization of any games in the Parodius series, though I can understand the reasons there. After all, some of the images would never have gotten by the censors back in the retro days. Now, though, is the perfect time to put this silly Gradius parody on display. We did see a very small number of Goemon games in the US with the label of Mystical Ninja, and I would think that there is enough of an interest in the rest to make it worth the trouble to translate. Konami has brought over some really weird stuff already, so let's keep with the program. Number 6. Mega Man Database. In 2005, Atomic Planet and Capcom gave us 3 versions of the Mega Man Anniversary Collection for Xbox, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. The Xbox and PS2 games were functionally identical, and they included remixed versions of much of the music, while the Cube's music was all the original tracks. While they did include the 2 arcade games, they failed to include something that would have made the collection so much cooler. That something was Mega Man: The Wily Wars, a 1995 collection that was only released in America to Sega Channel subscribers. More than a straight port with updated visuals and sound, The Wily Wars also featured a bonus game for those who finished all 3 hits included. For those of us who have played the original games so much that we can complete them without turning on a TV, it's just a small incentive that would still make us so happy. It would be great if US Mega Maniacs got the chance to play the Wily Wars without having to travel back in time, but why stop there? The success of Mega Man 9 and 10 on downloadable services would only increase if they were added to the collection. To further increase sales, Capcom could even add exclusive bonuses to the packages. After all, any Mega Man fanboy worth their weight in pixels would get every version, no matter how many consoles saw its release. On Xbox 360 and PS3, the Mega Man database could have remastered versions of Mega Man Legends and Legends 2, with the misadventures of Tron Bonne as an unlockable for those who finished the Legends pair. Wii U gamers could enjoy their own bonus in the forms of Mega Man and Bass and the never-released Mega Man Mania, a collection that was intended to bundle the 5 Game Boy Mega Man games into one package. Collections like these just might soften the wrath of those gamers who are looking forward to those infamously cancelled games like Mega Man Universe and Legends III. Number 5. Killer Instinct Ultimate Combo. Ever since arcades went the way of the dodo, fighting game fans the world over have awaited word from Rare that one of their favorite tournament fighters was coming back. That word has yet to be stated, and with the murky status of the intellectual property, it seems unlikely that Killer Instinct 3 will ever surface. But, this being my fantasy, let me share this idea. If KI3 ever did come out of left field, most likely as a Microsoft system exclusive, the publisher, likely Microsoft, would be wise to produce 2 packages. One, of course, would be the game by itself. The other, Killer Instinct Ultimate Combo, would probably cost an extra few dollars, but for that additional price, players would receive a few bonus items, such as a mini strategy guide, art book, maybe a statue of one of the fighters, and the real draw, arcade-perfect ports of Killer Instinct and Killer Instinct 2. I'll tell you, Rare, even if you just put one or both of these widely loved games on Xbox Live Arcade, preferably both, I can guarantee millions of downloads. I know more than a few PlayStation 3 devotees who would buy an Xbox 360 just to play Killer Instinct, especially if we could fight online. Is this shameless pleading working at all? Number 4. Treasures of Mana. Thanks largely to Secret of Mana, Square Enix's Mana series has been treasured by many players for many years, even though some have yet to be played in English. Here's a chance to remedy this. Treasures of Mana could gather and localize much of the Seiken Densetsu series. We've got some of them here. The first in the series was localized twice as Final Fantasy Adventure and Sword of Mana, both of which could be included, as well as the aforementioned masterpiece Secret of Mana. Seiken Densetsu 3, probably renamed into something like Illusion of Mana, would round out the package nicely. As a nifty bonus, Square Enix could even toss in Secret of Evermore since it shares the style. After all, Square USA put a lot of work into their only produced game, and it would be a shame for all that work to linger in obscurity forever. Number 3. Quintet of Gaia. I hope nobody is dismayed at the appearance of Square Enix 3 times in one top 12 list. It shouldn't be surprising. After all, for millions of gamers, anything published by Square Enix is an instant buy. While they have made compilations before, they are few and far between, and excessively rarely more than 2 games in one package. It's sad because they have a huge backlog of software that has not seen the light of day for many, many years, some of which has never been published in America. I could assemble several more collections from their library. This is merely one, which features one of their most beloved unofficial series, which I call Quintet of Gaia. My collection features Soul Blazer, Illusion of Gaia, and Terranigma, all developed by Quintet, hence the name. Of these 3, only Terranigma never saw release in the United States, an unfortunate victim of bad timing more than anything else. Now I imagine some might take umbrage at the appearance of only 3 games, since the title implies 5. Not to worry, because my ideal package would actually contain 6 games in total. ActRaiser and Robotrek would be immediately accessible from the start, with ActRaiser 2 being an unlockable game, perhaps as a reward for finishing the 3 Gaia games. Since Illusion of Gaia was initially published in the US by Nintendo, this collection would probably be a Wii U or 3DS exclusive. Number 2. Mother Legacy. This is almost too easy. There is a huge cult following for the Super NES Earthbound, known in Japan as Mother 2, and it's not out of the question for some of them to find and enjoy the official Nintendo-localized unreleased version of Mother, also known as Earthbound 0. Similarly, they may enjoy a fan-made translation of Mother 3. Nintendo has given us only excuses to explain why more Mother games have not been released from Japan in any form. Even if the fan base does not necessarily number in the millions, it should be good for significant sales of this package, Mother Legacy, which would include all 3 Mother games. And Nintendo, should you be listening, here's a touch of advice. If you're worried about legal retribution for the references or supposed musical similarities, don't be. If you release the Mother games to Western audiences, we the fans will gladly come to your defense if such a suit should come to pass. Number 1. The Legend of Zelda, The Unknown Quests. One of the most famous examples of games not seen outside of Japan is a set of Zelda games that was only playable via the Bishamon Satellaview subscription service. Nintendo has re-released games in the Zelda series multiple times, and even offered a Zelda collection to boost sales of the GameCube in 2003. I'm certain I was not alone in buying a second GameCube just to get the Zelda collection. I gave that cube to my sister, and she spent way too much time playing Animal Crossing, but that was an acceptable side effect. In its time, there were 4 Zelda games on the BS service. One was a re-release of A Link to the Past, perhaps the closest thing to a perfect 2D Zelda game that has ever been. 2 were different maps of the original Legend of Zelda with 16-bit audio-visual upgrades, and the last was a 4-part sequel to A Link to the Past entitled Ancient Stone Tablets. Aside from an unofficial translation, the last 3 games have not been playable since 1999. That should be corrected. Many players would buy the games in cartridge or disc form, or even as downloadable software. What better way is there to do this than The Legend of Zelda, The Unknown Quests? And I know this isn't Nintendo's modus operandi, but if they wanted to include extras, I'm sure we wouldn't turn down things like the Game Boy Color adventures and that 25th anniversary 4 Swords gem they gave us on the DS's. Also, I'd like to point out that the CDI triad is absolutely not necessary. In fact, it may be best if those are never mentioned again. That's it for this top 10. I mean 12. If by some miracle one of the game companies actually takes my word to heart and any of these Legacy compilations are produced, then I'm sure that at least one person in this world will be happy. If you have any suggestions for other Legacy compilations that should be made for modern consoles, let me know and I just might assemble another list. I've been Jax Mandrake, and you've been entertained.